Hello, I'm Don Larson, and I'm going to be talking to you about left-hand cello technique today. And to begin with, I would like to go over vibrato for those of you who are learning to do it, or those of you who already know how to do it. Vibrato in the 50s and the 60s seemed to be more of a kind of a doorknob where the wrist would turn like this. And now, these days, more modern cello technique requires that your hand, actually your forearm, moves like this. And your finger would be resting like that while my vibrato would be doing this. And one way, I have many beginning students, and one way to actually learn how to get that vibrato going is if you take the back of your arm and you move your hand up and down on the arm, just to get used to moving just the forearm. The upper arm and the shoulder are quiet. And so then you can make a slow, wide vibrato, like or a fast, wide vibrato. And after a while, you can hold your finger in one place instead of going up and down an arm. You hold the finger in one place, and you can go narrow and fast, narrow and slow. And so you have all these different speeds of vibrato to help you express yourself. And you really need that in order to be able to have your personality extrovert out. Vibrato leads the bow. It helps the bow stay in the string. It's really important to have a good vibrato. And teaching it is, everybody seems to have their own way of learning it. But I just want to put two things here: the forearm and your finger. And I used to always think that it was the finger moving this way that made the forearm move. But sometimes I make my arm get the momentum of that getting going by actually starting it. So I don't know which starts which. All I know is that you need to get that arm going, and the finger will go back. So the vibrato's this way and not just turning like this. And when I was at Juilliard, the best teacher I ever had made me, in fourth position up here, made me go pound the side of the arm. So if I did vibrato, rather than going some twisty kind of vibrato. So that's really simple, this thing about doing that and your finger. And to that, I think we could add one more thing about the left hand. And that is, keep your fingers together when you're doing vibrato. If it's as slow as you can. If you're holding your fingers together, you center the gravity in one place. And there's a lot of famous cellists out there who play with their fingers up in the air like that, I know. That doesn't make it right. That just makes it more difficult. And it's already hard enough to play the cello. There's no kidding about that. So what I would recommend is that push the fingers together so they're touching each other, and then rather than, someone once said, if you wanted a slow, wide vibrato, spread your fingers apart. Okay, maybe, but why do that? I can still do a slow, wide vibrato with the fingers together. So it's about doing that. So that's about vibrato then, and keeping your fingers together, combining two things, and your shoulder. I think the left hand is a wild animal. It does whatever it wants to do. And like any other wild animal, it has to be tamed. So what does wild animal mean as far as cello playing goes? It means people lifting their fingers way up in the air, holding down too many fingers at once. All this extra motion makes for a lot of work and makes your hand tight. And again, you want to keep your fingers so they're loose. So you go, it's really loose, like this. Like a pianist's fingers, right? Loose. But if you start going up and down, then they get tighter, and no more gravity, by the way. Once your finger's up here, you're lifting. So then you squeeze. So you don't want to squeeze. You don't want to squeeze on the bow, and you don't want to squeeze here. You want to be loose. If you get that, you're well on your way to being a great cello. So you have to practice keeping your fingers low to the fingerboard, close, minimizing the up and down, and not going up in the air. My little finger was, when I started learning this many, many years ago, it just wanted to go up. But for you, I think the thing would be, is realizing that technique has changed. It used to be, we had to hold down 4 fingers on the fingerboard. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was, my mother was a great cellist, and during her generation back in the 50s and even in the 60s still, kind of, it was a very, and even now I get students from other teachers where they were told to keep all 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's the worst technique you could do. You couldn't do worse than that. That's as bad as it gets. It makes you tight. So we walk. And so walking, letting go, lifting the weight, moving your finger to finger, and keeping your fingers low. So I know once you start moving the bow and you're doing this, you can focus on the left hand or you can focus on the bow. And usually you focus on the left hand and the heck with the bow, which is unfortunate. That's when you're learning a new piece, you're learning where the notes go. So pizzicato. So if you don't have to worry about the bow hand for a minute, just go, and you can feel, you don't have to look at your hand, but you can see, you can feel that it's going up, keep it close to the fingerboard. And then that way you're taming this wild animal thing. And for more advanced, there's one thing I might mention here. Sometimes you have to go from here, and you have to go, and so you go 1, 2, 4, shift, 1. And it was not till my 3rd year at Juilliard, a great teacher that I had told me to bunch my fingers together on the 4th note and bring my first finger, or this guy, up and push the little finger out of the way and shift. So it was really close. So I go, and so instead of having to shift from B to E, I'm shifting from almost a D. It's a small shift then. And you're using gravity, rolling the hand forward a little bit, like that. And so walking is about moving the gravity. Just like if I was to walk across this room, you can see how you move the weight from one leg to the other, and you're using gravity rather than squeezing. And so you want to relax your shoulder, maybe, and think, just pull down on the fingerboard with your fingers, and feel how that the arm weighs a lot. So and put that weight on one finger, and move that weight to the other. You're not squeezing, you're just using gravity at a time. One finger down at a time. Moving the weight from one finger to the next. Releasing, lifting up the previous finger and moving the weight. Move your fingers. Move your fingers. Lift, 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 lift. And actually you have a tendon for going down and you have a tendon for going up. You need to release while you're doing it down, up and down. So, yeah. So we talked about minimizing the up and down. And I've been teaching for 20 some years now, so I see a lot of techniques that I kind of go, wow, scary. And one of them is when the student arrives and their hand is shaped as like this. Very tight looking. We'll demonstrate this more closely at the end of this, but I would recommend having more of a shape in your hand like that, which allows you to lay pretty flat on the fingerboard. Not totally straight, but just a little round. That way, you get much more meat on the string back here than playing just on the tips of your fingers. And I know there's some great cellists who play with her like that, but I'm going to suggest to you that this is a much more difficult way to play the cello. much more difficult. Tight, and it invites this claw thing going on, so why that shape, okay, if your teacher makes you play like that, you should run away. Don't walk, run. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but honestly, honest to God, that's a horrible technique, and it used to be around for years, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And this, because our notes are far apart, this is not the violin, this is the cello. And so when my finger is absolutely straight, you can see I can stretch them that far. But I start rounding them, now I've lost 20%, and so to reach the other note. Now, if you have a smaller hand than mine, it makes it even really hard to reach from 1 to 4 back. And so people do this hopping thing. Anyway, I would suggest having that shape let your fingers spread more. And sometimes I even take the thumb away entirely to reach. But this shape of being super round and playing on your fingertips, there's times when you have to do that too. How you hold the left hand depends on the passage. And I know that's a cop-out. So what do you mean by that? Well, it depends on the passage, kids, so good luck. And it means sometimes if I'm in stretch position, for example, or what they call extended, then my elbow comes forward and I'm pointing my finger back and my fingers around. So, and if you have to play behind the string because you're playing, I can't be down flat again because I'm playing double stops. So it depends on the passage what you do with the left hand. But most of the time, you can be here. Where my wrist comes in to get my fingers a little bit flatter on the fingerboard instead of being up here like this. So I push the thumb underneath a bit more. This shape of the hand is kind of like the same shape of the fingerboard, which is that. And in my very first lesson with a great teacher back when I was a kid, he had me put my fingers straight and pretend there were 4 little eyeballs coming over the side of the cello and just round them. Because I used to play on my fingertips like that. And he got me to change my left hand technique by going up and just imagine going. And I realized that instead of being here, being tight, it helped me relax. So my goal for you is to have as loose left hand as you can have. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if you're watching this and you think your left hand is too tight, think about this, about not going up in the air, and think about this wild animal here in the left hand, which it is, and try and tame it in using gravity, and maybe even do the 4 little eyeball thing and feel with the string hitting the finger way back here, you have 3 times as much meat on the string, which gives you a warmer tone.